Welcome back to the Nassman Hockey Podcast. My co-host is actually covering the game tonight against the Devils and the Islanders, and I'm now once again joined by Dan Saraceni of Islanders Anxiety. Dan, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm just glad to be back. Good to talk to you again. It's I don't know what James is experiencing now in the very blue and orange Prudential Center, but it's fun, and we'll talk about the game here, I guess, that he watched live.
Yeah, you've already recorded an episode that covers the last week of games and all the shenaniganery that happened last week.
Right.
And I purposely didn't listen to it because I didn't want to add too much crossover. I'm sure you'll repeat yourself, but I wanted it to be organic as opposed to me getting to that. But it's funny. I was thinking the other day and knowing that you were going to come on, and I was listening to last week's episode, and I'm sitting in the car, or maybe it was it was late on Friday night. I was listening to Weird Islanders about Randy Robitaille, which. Yeah, it just gets me. I when I'm driving and I'm listening to that show, I just get in a trance thinking about the team at that point. I'm like, I need to pay attention to driving, but I always want to jump into the conversation. And it's so funny how a lot of us are on the same wavelength because you were speaking with was it Adam Gretz?
Adam Gretz, yeah, he's a Penguins writer and a Penguins fan, and
good follow.
Yeah.
And you're going back and forth between Penguins and Islanders, and it was just a great going through some of that. And as our listeners will know, I'm a big Kasparaitis fan, and I'm waiting for someone to say it, and then you just squeeze it in there in between a couple of players, and I'm like, oh, they did it. And it's not really that surprising. I think it was, it's an obvious one, but it's just funny how we're all maybe we all know the same stuff is probably what it is. But
and we're all prone to falling down the same rabbit holes, really, is what it is, and that's the beauty of Weird Islanders. Like, what started as just what Mike and I would do in a group chat, or before we recorded Anxiety or after we recorded Anxiety or saw each other or whatever, we just decided, wouldn't it be funny if we just talked about Weird Islanders on a podcast? We just have a guest and we just talk, and that's what it comes down to. And I always tell people when they come on, I mean, you've been on obviously, and it's just, we start at somebody and we see where it goes, and we end up talking about God only knows who. And then it's my job to I can get stuck in that trance too, but it's my job to kind of steer us back into the player at hand enough to make it about him and focus on him. And the Randy Robitaille one was great because he could have been, like we said on the episode, he could have been a weird anything. He played for so many teams for such a short period of time. I think the only team he played more than 100 games for was the Predators. But other than that, I mean, I didn't even know he played for the Minnesota Wild. Who thinks of Randy Robitaille as a Minnesota Wild? Well, he was there for, I don't know, maybe a handful of games at some point. But, if you did a weird Penguins or a weird Flyers or a weird Bruins, he could be, or weird Thrashers, he could be it. And there were so many ties to him, and Adam was great. And I swear to God, I never thought anybody else other than one of us would pick Randy Robitaille. But when he picked him, I was like, oh my God, that's so perfect. So we have a few more episodes to go. The next one is about a player who's actually currently playing, or at least could potentially currently be playing. I'm not even sure, but I'm looking forward to it. We got a few more coming up this year. So it's so much fun that we could keep on going forever. I mean, our list is, you've seen the list. It's
yeah. I know I need to sign up for next season. I try to go through them.
Right.
And we pay homage to that. I hope it's understood as such. I started doing a random number generator at the end of the show,
right?
Just because I want to take part in that. Again, I'm sitting in the car, and I'm like, oh, I so badly just want to be part of this conversation and chime in. So I was like, we need to find a way to do this on our own, and it's a lot less. It's very short because we don't have time to research anything. So it's just a random number, and we just go through it quickly. Not every single episode, but when we have a little extra time.
The research is tricky, and some guys, they don't require a lot because they haven't played a lot, and but then there are some guys who, even though their Islanders time was very short, it takes a long time to research. So Cliff Ronning was a guy who,
that was only a great one.
Yeah, he spent a half a season with the Islanders. There wasn't a whole lot to talk about, but even then, I mean, the guy had a 15-year career, so we went on and on. But then there are some guys who, the list of notes is, maybe like this big, and that's it, because they're only, a handful of games came with the Islanders, and then they were off to Europe or just retired or disappeared or something. So I enjoy it. It's fun research, it's fun work, but it can, at some point when you're on the second day of it, you're like, wow, this is a lot. Is this really I hope we use these notes, because this is a lot to go on here. But again,
and you
it's
find
fun.
clips like you find like actual. I love hearing. It makes it real, like it's almost like a documentary, and
Yeah.
that's it. Strangely enough, and whether that's intentional or not, over time you'll have um, this portfolio of all these Islanders, even if you never get to the end of it.
Yeah.
Of no one else is documenting it quite like that, like Hockey DB or Hockey
Right.
Reference. Like, yeah, you can tell who was on the team and go
Mm.
through all of that, and people surely remember. But actually documenting it as like archival Islanders that you wouldn't have known about that,
Mm.
um, other than, and I kind of, it's the podcast equivalent of just getting a random pack of hockey cards back in the day
Basically, yeah.
and just be like, I don't know, I guess this guy's on the team, or you know what I mean, and or he's in the yearbook that you used to get. They used to hand out the books
Right.
or the rosters, and you're like, I don't know, I'm not really keeping track of who's on the team.
Mm.
Pre-internet from one game to the next, let alone one season to the next or something. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know, my favorite people are there still. Like, I guess that's all I care about.
Yeah, it's very
And
much remembering some guys, basically. But the clips, I think, do bring it alive. But again, sometimes it's hard to find. Sometimes they're not out there. But when we, I'll look for clips. But then if the person we talk to, I'll look for clips before the episode. But then when we talk to the person, they might remember an actual game on a specific date in a specific season or a specific play that, when you search YouTube, that's what will bring it up, and that's where we'll look for it. And so, like, that Randy Robitaille game that we talked about in the last episode, which was actually, if you look up Islanders Randy Robitaille, it's not going to come up. But if you searched under whatever it was that I searched under, that was more like I used the date, and I forget what date it was. It was February something, I guess 2007, and I found it, and I was able to put the clips in there and get the Robitaille highlights in there. And yeah, I enjoy it. It's fun, and we have some friends who run great YouTube pages that have that kind of stuff and can find it, and it's out there. But some of these guys, they played so long ago that it's actually, their stuff isn't on YouTube, and that's what's kind of crazy. You think YouTube is billion, trillion, million, whatever clips, and then but yeah, you go to look for one particular Islander, you ain't gonna find him. It's just like, man, it didn't feel like it was that long ago, because I remember watching the guy play, but apparently to YouTube, it's a long time ago. So,
and I mean, and the point is that it's a player that had a short career, so the
yes,
odds of
yeah,
finding
right.
a clip is super slim. And I'll say this, and we can move on. So
Yeah.
speaking of remembering specific games, Mike's a bit of a savant with this.
He's ridiculous. Yeah,
Because
he's
he's my
ridiculous.
age, and he remembers very specific things about
Yeah.
early. He must have just been going to a lot of games, because I certainly wasn't
Right.
watching him on TV at 8, 9, 10 years old all the
Yeah.
time anyway.
He's very good at that, and he's also very good at remembering who else was on that team. That's my thing too. Is like, we'll talk about a guy, and he'll be like, "Oh yeah, he was on a line with whatever," and it's another weird Islander, and you're like, "Really? I didn't even realize they were on the same team." So yeah, he's younger than I guess you're about the same age as him, but he's younger than me, and I don't know. My big thing is sort of remembering the feeling around the team at the time, which was usually pretty bleak, if we're being honest. But like, a lot of the kind of stuff of, what I was reading in Newsday at the time, or what was on, ESPN NHL Tonight at the time, or something like that. So yeah, no, he's great. And we had our live event at Offside NYC a few weeks ago, and his brother and sister were there. And of course, like a good brother and sister, they were telling me how important I am into the show, and how Mike is really not that important to the show. And I'm like, no, that could not be further from the truth. We are both the show. Like, I could not, nobody would just listen to me talk about this kind of stuff. And, without him, I couldn't really do this. So, we are, and I know what they're doing, but it was kind of funny that I was the one making sure that Mike's honor was defended while his brother and sister were cutting him down. But again,
that sounds typical.
Yeah, exactly.
So I did want to say, we kind of joked about a bunch of different things so far. I did want to touch on we joked for a second on Twitter that if things went sideways, that we would just talk about things on Isles eBay just to kind of go through. Do you typically buy some older gear or just like kind of like look through things? I know I'm always looking through stuff just because.
I'm kind of a tourist on Islanders eBay. My eBay buying is mainly old video games and old toys. You can see some right over my shoulder there, my old GI Joe toys, and I have a ton of video games too. But it is fun to look around there. I buy a lot of books off of eBay. I do an Islanders book club for our Patreon, so I end up buying some books every once in a while off of eBay. It's just funny how stuff pops up. Like somebody had bought us we had bought a toothbrush, I think, for somebody the first year we started looking at it, because it was like, who has an Islanders toothbrush from whatever year it was? It's like that kind of stuff you find there. And you can find jerseys are always fun too. There's a great Twitter account that's called Isles eBay that's just like, you find these misspelled jerseys, or like, somebody will write as a prototype. Meanwhile, it's just some knockoff that somebody bought at TJ Maxx or whatever and had some, name put on the back of it. So it can be, with 50 years worth of stuff, it can be a fun, rabbit hole to fall down. And honestly, if anybody's out there is in the looking for a 50th anniversary commemorative book that was given to season ticket holders, well, let me tell you where to find it. It's on eBay because there's a lot of them out there, and they are kind of expensive. But I'm more of a tourist in there. I kind of check stuff just every once in a while, and it gets kind of pricey, to be honest with you. I mean, eBay, the stuff I buy is pretty pricey, but I'm a big flea market goer. In fact, I'm planning another trip at the end of the month with a buddy of mine from work who comes all the way out from Brooklyn, and we go again hunting for games mostly. But I've told my wife that if I ever find like the 80s style satin jacket with the snaps, like the Al Arbor style jacket with the snaps and the Islanders logo up here, I may stop going to the flea market forever, because if I can find one of those, that's it. That's all that's left to buy. Like, there's nothing left that I could possibly find that would be cooler than that. So, and I would just wear it all the time. Basically, I'd wear it in the house all season long. Yeah, it's like 100%. Be the greatest thing ever. Yeah. So
yeah, I've seen some. It's not the '80s version, but some of the '90s kind of starter versions of that floating
puffy,
around.
Yeah. This is a little bit. Yeah.
I've definitely poked around, and I get some things here and there. I bought some hats. Years ago, I don't want to say it's really hipster of me. Before the fisherman thing really popped off, I snagged a bunch of stuff. Someone had actually I knew someone that sent me one, like a black version of the fisherman jersey, which was weird, from
That's
Starter.
Cool. Interesting.
And I wound up selling that, and then I bought the wave jersey with the regular Islanders crest, and like I've bought hats, and I was about like all the '93 stuff, because I got a Kasparaitis Stanley Cup jersey, or from that run anyway.
That's
so
cool. That's really cool.
That one was a little pricey, but super worth it. I try not to go too crazy. I might need to pick your brain separately about video games, because I did buy a Nintendo for myself.
Oh wow.
I found one in pretty good condition. I have my Super Nintendo from when I was a kid and my N64.
That's great.
But I always wanted a Nintendo.
NES.
There's something about that square controller and playing Mario that just is very.
No matter how big your hands get, it still feels right in your hands.
Yes.
I have one too. Actually, I have a thing called a Retron 5 that plays NES, Genesis games, Super Nintendo games, even plays Japanese versions of those games. And I have a couple of the controllers, the original Nintendo controllers I can plug in the side, and it feels good. My personal favorite is the Sega Genesis. Downstairs, I have a whole wall of Genesis games. I have a ton of NES games too. But and my wife, now I just got a thing that plays TurboGrafx 16 games and Atari Lynx games. And my wife is not too pleased, because now I'm going to be bringing in other old games, and I'm buying Japanese versions. I'm buying the American versions. I'm like, I try not to spend too much, but it does pile up after a while. And then, she's like, why do you need this again? And I'm like, well, because, come on, it's Legendary Axe. It's a classic TurboGrafx game. Of course, she has never heard of it before. But
I mean, if that's your thing, I always think about that. It's like, well, I wouldn't do that, but if that's they wouldn't do the thing that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I always understand that.
I love the preservation aspect of it. Again, the Genesis was my heyday. That's my favorite console, but there's something about that plastic box with the artwork on the outside, and then the manual inside, and then the artwork on the cartridges and the feel of the cartridges. It just brings me right back, and it makes me happy. It's my place of joy, And I have a Switch and an Xbox Series X too, but there's something about those games that the amount of comfort and joy those games bring me is priceless, basically. So I don't mind spending a few bucks here and there on it. And honestly, the most expensive one I've bought is probably about $70, and those are new. Like there are still companies that make new cartridges. I promise viewers, we're gonna talk about the Islanders in a minute, but we are. They make
we're catching up here.
Yeah, they make new cartridges, and there are some companies that were licensed games that came out from the 90s, but were never released here, and so I can buy those, and they come in deluxe packaging with all kinds of artwork and seals of authenticity and stuff like that. And so I have a game called like Mega Man: The Wily Wars, which is actually a remake of the first 3 Mega Man games just on the Genesis, and it was only available on a thing called Sega Channel, which was like a very, very early downloadable service that you had for the Genesis. It came with like a modem, and you could download, if your cable company offered it, you can download games right to the Genesis. This was in 1992. So it's like, 15 years ahead of its time. And one of the exclusive games on it was this Mega Man: The Wily Wars. And it took, 30 years for it to come out on a cartridge. And I'm like, I'm buying that. And my wife is like, don't you have Mega Man? I'm like, oh, I have a million Mega Man copies. But this one is this special Genesis one that, hasn't seen the light of day on these shores ever before. So I have to have it. So I bought it. And it's cool. And I think I played it one time. But that's besides the point.
As a vinyl lover and collector,
that's cool. My boss loves vinyl records. He's
I understand the aspect of kind of getting nerdy about it, and I just cataloged pretty much my whole collection, so I understand like getting into the nuance of where the pressing is from, what year it was, all the little nuances. Obviously, the artwork. That was my Christmas last year. During that week in between Christmas and New Year's, I just sat on my floor and I cataloged it in Discogs, which is very cool. Talk about a place where you can spend a lot of money. But I cataloged it, but I also was just sitting in front of there. It was very analog. Like you were holding the things and you were playing them, and I really appreciated the slowness of the day. Per every 18 minutes to 20 minutes, and then flipping the record and going through.
I have a Google Sheets that's all my games, and it's probably 20 or 30 different tabs of different consoles. And I had to, because I found myself buying games that I already own. And I'm like, all right, well, I need to do something about that. So I didn't even use a cool app like that. I just used Google Sheets and made my own. And it's a little unwieldy, but it has to be done because, sometimes now, especially with games, they're digital. So there's some games I own 4 different times. One's digital, one's on a cartridge, once on a PC, and then once on something else. So it's you got to be careful with it. But I just try not to buy the same thing I already own. And I did it actually just this morning. I did it today. I added a game to my eBay watch list, and then realized, wait, I own this. So I was like, why am I buying this again? So I took it off the watch list. I really forgot that I owned it.
I've done that on vinyl. We'll move on. But I did this on vinyl. I have like Black Sabbath Paranoid.
Nice.
On like a special pressing from Vinyl Me.
Wow.
And I haven't opened it because I have an old one that's like super beat to shit. But I'll just listen to that one. Like I don't even know what this other one looks like. But I really don't do that. I typically will open them, and I don't unless there's another one that I know eventually would be worth something. I don't know if it's worth it's like, don't save the special candle, just burn it kind of thing. So I'm leaning in that direction. I might just kind of open them, but
that's just the idea of having you could frame it and hang it up. I mean, that's one of my favorite albums ever. So if you had just like a framed copy of Paranoid, like on the back wall back there, that would be just the coolest thing ever. It's just awesome,
so in the next room over is where my drum set is, and I do have some things on the wall. So I bought a Long Island band, Crime and Stereo. I bought their new record, and they had like a special edition cover and like something that came with it. And I was just feeling spendy, so I did it. But I actually hung up. I have like the 12x12 LP frames, and I hung up a couple cool things like that. And I have some test pressings from bands that I really like. And
again, see, that's your thing.
I totally understand.
So, I'm not I'm not a vinyl guy, but I'm a CD guy. Like I buy CDs and I still put them in my iPhone and listen that way. And my wife is always like, why don't you just we do Spotify? I'm like, but I want to own it. I want to own the CD. I don't want to get stuck without Wi-Fi and then have no songs. So I have all these songs. I own them, and that's it. That's the end of the story. Yeah. And especially now, again, going back to the flea market stuff, you can go to the flea market. These CDs are so cheap. And it's not unusual to find some of the greatest albums ever for 3 for $5 or something like that, or a dollar a piece or something like that, and then you own them forever, and I don't have to worry about Spotify.
I was at a show last night and they just had a box of CDs and it just said free. So I was like, I just went through, I grabbed a couple. I was like, cool. I guess I
That's
have
cool.
these CDs now and I can just
Sure.
I like you said, I have it. They're gonna be in my car for a while now, and I'm probably just gonna forget about it.
Yeah, right.
But I need to there's another box in my mom's house that I need to grab.
Yeah.
Or
Oh,
just
yeah,
a
and you'll
box
get
of
it back.
CDs. And then I need a CD player.
Yeah.
Okay. So 20 minutes in. We're gonna get to the New York Islanders here. I wanted to touch on the Coyote situation, but I'm sure we'll get into a whole
Oh,
rabbit
yeah.
hole on that. I think I understand being in that situation, talking about something that happened a long time ago. For to go into the Islanders conversation, that we were really close to that, and having to make the decision, you're going to follow the team, and watching all this stuff was heartbreaking.
Mhm.
I don't relate all the way, but I remember thinking like this team could just leave at any moment. And so if you want to add anything, I don't know if you and Mike spoke about it this week too, but that's
Yeah,
tough.
we went into a whole extended thing on it yesterday on the last episode of Anxiety, and yeah, it's just the thing about it to me is like it sucks for the fans that are going to have to watch this team move. It sucks for the players that apparently don't sound like they want to move. Some of the business staffers, according to Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts this morning, are gonna, or I should say, yes, Monday morning, are gonna stay with the AHL team, and that's all. It all sucks. It's not gonna make anybody happy, really. I mean, maybe the players at some point will be happy, but at first they've got to like tell all their wives and kids and families that, oh yeah, by the way, now we got to move to Salt Lake City. Like, that's crazy. But to me, the craziest thing about it is the NHL is going to give this same owner, Alex Morello, a chance to own an expansion team, within a 5-year window, and bring it to Arizona if he can like secure the same garbage that we've been hearing for 15 years. Like, oh, if he can secure the land and get an arena built. This guy hasn't been able to do this all this time.
That was
He's
the exact note that I wrote down.
Yeah, like he hasn't paid bills. He's kind of been very combative with different entities. Like what I said with us was like, with the Islanders thing, you had a kind of a contained cast of characters that we all knew about. Like Kate Murray obviously was a big character. Charles Wong obviously before them was Ed Mangano, and Tom Galata was the Tom Swazi. Like it was kind of the same sort of few people around. With the Coyotes, it seems like it's somebody new all the time, like the mayor of this town, or the governor here, or this guy, or whatever.
The
And
NHL owned the team. Like it just was
right,
always devolved into chaos.
exactly. And they're having like town hall meetings, and they're having, we had one referendum that failed. They seem to have one like every year. There's some kind of vote that fails. And so to me, that's just salt in the wound. Like it's bad enough that this team is going to leave, but then who's going to want to trust this guy to build a new team here for these fans? Like that they've been through enough. And my other point the thing that also drives me kind of nuts is like, do the Coyotes have as many fans as like the Leafs or Canadians or Rangers or Red Wings or whatever? No, frankly, they don't. Frankly, neither do the Islanders. But those people care about that team just as much as a Steve Dangle cares about his team. Like, and you never hear that part. And these people are really going to kind of going through it. And on one hand, the saga is over. But on the other hand, like you said, I mean, who are they going to follow the team? Are they going to, wait for a new team? Are they going to follow the AHL Roadrunners? Are they going to, pick a different thing? I have a friend of mine at work who's one of the other big hockey fans, and he's from Hartford, and he was a huge Whalers fan. And when they moved to Carolina in 2002 or whatever it was, or no, sorry, 1997, he wasn't going to follow a team in North Carolina. The hell with that. And so he ended up, rooting for the Red Wings. And now he's a big Red Wings fan, because like he wasn't going to just follow that. That wasn't his team anymore. It was somebody else's team. So let them be somebody else's team. So, it's tough and it just sucks. And the fact, making it so much worse is that the NHL still wants to be in bed with this guy. And I have no idea why. And, I guess I was thinking about it this morning, and while listening to 32 Thoughts, I wonder if people would have said the same thing about Charles Wong had the Islanders moved, and, they've given them a chance to put an expansion team on Long Island or something like that. But,
I mean, that wasn't necessarily, he was doing all the right things.
Yeah.
I don't think it was, if I'm remembering correctly, and I don't mean to try to rewrite anything, and maybe you remember, maybe don't. I don't think he was asking for public money.
No.
He was just saying, I want to build something essentially where the Coliseum was on useless land.
Yeah.
and do something with it. That's actual
Yeah.
economic development. Not to really get into that. What he was asking for, I believe, in Phoenix was very different, or
Oh
wherever
yeah.
they are, Scottsdale.
Yeah, Wong, I mean, we never really got to this point, but he was saying it was going to be privately funded, and it was going to be a huge, big complex. That was his problem, was that he tried to bite off more than he can chew. And like, it wasn't just a Coliseum, it was going to be housing and like medical laboratories and, buildings and all that, office buildings and all that kind of stuff, which again is like revitalization of what is essentially just a giant parking lot with an
Yeah.
arena in the middle.
I
And
pictured it like the Deer Park outlets with a hockey rink. Like at least, all right, it was something. It's new, it's
right,
whatever, and there's a train station. I don't know if that was
right.
Uniondale
That,
was
yeah.
ever going to get one, but that was the goal.
Right. And but the problem was that the small-minded, people in charge at the time only wanted the arena. And Wong's whole thing, and he was 100% right, was that we can't make money if it's just an arena. Like it's not going to work that way. And now you see what he meant with UBS Arena. Like people complain about the prices, the ticket prices are high, the food prices are high. Yeah, that's the way it works. Like unfortunately, that's how it is. But you also are going to have Belmont Park. You're also going to have this retail village that they're going to build. You're also going to have a hotel that's right there. So all of that stuff rakes in money to the team, which the Islanders never had the chance to get because they only had this one arena. And that's why in the last days of the Coliseum, I'm sure you'll remember, every square inch of it had an ad on it. Like, if you went to the bathroom, like the handle had an ad on it, the urinal had an ad in it. Like there was a place that didn't have Cablevision or, Newsday or whatever, because that's the only way they could have made any money. And so, Wong stuck with it, and unfortunately, they had to move to Barclays Center, and that's what's funny. Like I was thinking, like for the Islanders, they just had to move to Brooklyn. The Coyotes had to move to Utah, which is not
Yeah, what a
exactly
difference.
close to Arizona. But the big difference too with the Coyotes was they got an arena. They built it in Glendale. That was the whole thing. This was supposed to have been squashed 15 years ago, but then what happened was nobody wanted to drive to Glendale. It was too far away.
It's like the
And
Senators as well. Although I think there's a subway line there now, or Metro line or
maybe,
something,
but
but
like it
it's
was so
nowhere.
remote that nobody wanted to go. And so you
Yeah.
just created a different kind of boondoggle. And then that ended up with them in Mullet Arena with the college rink and all that. And now someplace else. So, on one hand, I feel for, these guys trying to get this arena deal done. But on the other hand, it's like, dude, you couldn't make it work. Like why? And why wouldn't he just, if he's getting paid $1 billion for the NHL for his team, who are then going to turn around and sell it to this guy in Salt Lake City for $1 billion plus, why wouldn't he just walk away? They just paid you $1 billion. Just leave. Go to a beach. I don't know. Sit on it. Don't do anything. Why would you do this all over yourself again? I don't really get it. But Arizona's a big place, and there's a lot of people there. So I think as a market, it still has a viability. But man, I don't know. These guys have played their last card. I don't know. I don't know why they want to keep
I
going.
I agree. I agree. I think the silver lining, and just because I was frustrated with it today, at least the fans following the team to Salt Lake City won't have to worry about blackouts on
That's a good
ESPN.
point.
As I struggle to just get my ESPN to work today,
Right.
they don't have to worry about that. And I was like, it
Right.
made the team was in Kansas City. I wouldn't have to worry about this.
Yeah.
Although I don't know that I would be an Islander fan if they did. I definitely feel for that. Like, understand the Hartford person.
Yeah.
Hell, it was hard to be an Islander fan in like 2010. Like there was
Yeah.
just nothing to watch. I know, as aggravated as we are about this season,
Yeah.
at least there was some kind of substance there,
Yeah.
as good or bad. That was
Yeah.
just as wonder bread boring as it ever was.
Yeah.
And even with, as Mike says, the guy who was drafted before Victor Hedman.
Well,
So
2011 was the referendum year, and that was an exciting year. That was the Grabner season. They had named Jack Capuano head coach. They had Al Montoya was the goalie for half a season there. So that was a pretty exciting season, and it seemed like things were going in the right direction. And the referendum failed and the whole thing. But my contingency plan was always Buffalo. Like I was like, if the Islanders moved to Kansas City or wherever it was, or to me, I don't know if I could root for them again. I probably would have rooted for the Sabres because I couldn't root for the Rangers, that's for sure. And I think the
that's right.
Hurricanes had already moved by that point, and I didn't want to root for the Devils. I would have felt really weird. So that was, and Pat LaFontaine is my favorite player, so it would have been very natural to glom onto the Sabres. But having seen what's happened to the Sabres since and what's happened to the Islanders, thank God I didn't have to root for the
Yeah,
Sabres because I would have been in a really bad shape. But
a different misery for sure.
yeah,
And
exactly. Never ending
as
misery.
as a kid, I had my playoff teams when the Islanders would inevitably not make it or not make it past the first round. I had these kind of contingency plans,
Sure, me too. Yeah.
and I was an Avalanche guy, which I definitely want to speak to Mike about, as he was on
Mm.
the Red Wings side of the whole
Yeah.
that saga. That's interesting. But yeah, I think I like the Devils. Roger was very exciting. So like watching, like, the cup was local, and you're
Yeah.
12 years old. Who
I
cares?
went to a bunch of Devils playoff games during that era because, like you said, the Islanders never made it, and it was a short drive away. And I have a good friend who's a Penguins fan, and so they played the Penguins a couple of years in the playoffs. So we would just to go to Devils playoff game, just to watch what a playoff game was like, even though it wasn't my team, and it was
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
So yeah, I never disliked the Devils, during the Lamoriello
I was just
era.
jealous.
Yeah, I was very jealous. Yeah, like you said, why couldn't my team do that? Why couldn't my team play defense? I don't know. These guys are the only ones
Yeah,
who seem to do it. My team doesn't know how, but
yeah. And then I followed Kasparov to Pittsburgh, and was exciting to watch him there. He scored that
right.
overtime goal against Buffalo,
That's right.
and obviously, I mean, like, yeah, I think Buffalo in the period that you're, well, I guess this is like way post Hasek. I would have understood if it was like 1999. It was like, oh hell yeah, everyone loves Dominic Hasek. Like, everyone had goalie pads and was just flopping around in the street pretending they
Right.
were Dominic Hasek. So
Yeah.
I would relate there. But yeah, different by 2011, 12, whatever. Yeah, a little bit of a different story.
Mm.
Anyway, down to business. I want to start our as everyone knows, Rob Traub on Isles Twitter. He posted this, and I think it's an interesting way to go into this. I just found it right before we logged on here. 28 wins in regulation, 16 overtime shootout losses, 23 blown third period leads. The NHL's worst penalty kill. 105 second period goals allowed. Yikes! I actually didn't that one. I'm reading it for the first time right now. A minus 17 goal differential. 2 separate 6-game losing streaks. Somehow, though, we are looking at a playoff run, or at least we made the playoffs.
Mm.
And I a season that has felt so terribly long. Now, as we joked before we hit record,
Mm.
lasts at least 5 more games.
Yeah.
And I I want to get your take on, do you have things that you can even be excited about before we dive into the Devils game in the last week of what kind of craziness? Are there things to be excited about, or is it just kind of like worry and a little bit of dread, or is it just like a mix of everything?
Um, at the current moment, I think it's joy. I think it's relief. I think probably more than anything else, that Wednesday's game is certainly less important now than it would have been. Thank God. The Islanders for once did us a favor and did the right thing and came out, and it wasn't a perfect game when we talk about it, but they needed to win a game and they won it. And this was one of the easier wins of the year, from a nerves and anxiety point of view. So right now, I think it's fine. They are going to play the Hurricanes. The Rangers have won, so they're going to win the President's Trophy. So that locks Carolina into second place, and so the Islanders are going to play them. Am I looking forward to playing the Hurricanes? No, quite frankly, because I hate them and I hate the way they play, and I don't want to watch a repeat of last year's series. But it's funny because as much of a roller coaster as the Islanders season has been, like you said, 6-game losing streak, 7-game, 6-game winning streak, whatever. Now, if they win tomorrow, they're going to have won 9 of their final 10 games of the season or something like that. So, it's they've won. I guess they had won 6 in a row, lost the Rangers. Now it's 7 out of 8. So, it's also been a roller coaster for us. And like we were asking ourselves not too long ago, do we even want this team to make the playoffs?
And
Like they're just,
that was really what I was getting at, is like, there's this
like
underlying kind of thing where
right.
I don't know what we're rooting for. Like, we've seen, especially because it was like all signs were pointing to they were probably going to make, because they had to go on such a run that they would probably make the third in the division,
Right.
or the second wild card. Either way, it was like they're going to play Carolina again, and we've
Right.
seen this movie before.
Yeah.
We don't need a repeat.
Right. And it's not that the Hurricanes, and I say this with all due respect, I'm not going to trash talk these guys. It's not that the Hurricanes are some kind of unbeatable team. Like the Islanders can't be, they've beaten them twice already this year. Don't forget, I mean, took overtime, but they still beat them. But it's just, we've seen this movie before. But the thing about the Islanders that makes the Hurricanes such a bad matchup for them is that the biggest issue for them is that they're just sloppy. like they're just sloppy. They turn the pucks over all the time. They're prone, even tonight against the Devils, a team whose season has been over for months now. Like they start slow. The Devils had like, what was it, the first 6 shots of the game. The Islanders didn't have a shot for until 8 minutes into the game, and of course
They had
it's
11
JT.
shots through 45 minutes.
Yeah, like they did. It wasn't a good game. I mean, the attempts, I guess, the whatever Corsi, whatever you want to call it, were a little bit closer, but it's not like the Islanders like dominated them. They just ended up scoring all the goals, and so I'm playing pretty smart defense. That's probably
It was a
how they won
matter
the
of
game.
fact game. They kind of just were like, we need to win this game.
Right,
Don't do anything too stupid. They've only
right,
managed to do that a little bit
a
in the
little bit,
second
right?
period because,
Yeah,
which was finally, I'll say, was finally acknowledged by
mm,
Brendan and Butch
that what?
in the beginning, like about their second periods being bad. I
Mm,
hadn't really heard it before. And they're like,
right,
yeah, all season this has been an issue, or
yeah.
something to that effect. And I was like, wow, good for them for finally being like, well, we didn't see this coming. As like, you're watching more of this than any of
Yeah.
us. How do you not see that?
I
And
was so mad at Shannon Hogan the other day because when that Rangers game, that second period of Tuesday's Rangers game, when the Islanders were gangbusters in the first period, were absolutely terrible in the second period, and she was on with Matt Molson in between periods, and then was like, "Not the period we expected out of the Islanders," and I was like, Shannon, it's game 78. We've seen this 78 times. How could you not expect this team to not come out in the second period? They do this all the time. But yeah, no, that's a perfect example. And then also, like you mentioned before, or Rob's tweet mentioned before, their penalty killing has been terrible all year. Now, in fairness, they were 3 for 3 tonight against the Devils. It actually looked really good, and they've looked pretty good on the penalty kill lately. But of course, what does that mean? The power play's been pretty terrible. Although they scored a power play goal
they
tonight,
did.
so if they can go 3 for 3 on the penalty kill and score a power play goal in every game, then they might be okay. But there's just so much about this team that is, I don't even know what the word would be. It's just it's not tight. It's too loose, I guess is probably the
Yeah.
best way to put it. But
And Carolina beefed up the team. So it's not like they're
yeah,
not worse than they were last year.
no,
That's how I'm
absolutely not.
thinking about it. It's
Right.
like, oh, okay. Now they didn't wind up with Kuznetsov, did they?
No, but they did get Kuznetsov,
Yeah.
and they got Jake Kensel, obviously.
Yeah. So it's like,
Right.
all right. So
The
now you have a team that you couldn't contain last year for all other than 7 minutes where you scored 6 goals, over the course of 2 games. That was
yeah.
it. So now you have to worry about 2 more players that are just going to put it in the back of your net every time you make a mistake.
The big advantage the Islanders have over the Hurricanes in a series, and we'll do a playoff preview. I'm sure you and James will do a playoff preview. We don't need to get too far into this, but obviously the goaltending, if that's a big difference, and like the Hurricanes have done very well with Freddie Anderson and Antti Ranta, obviously, and Peter
Yeah.
Kuchenkov, but the Islanders have 2 of the best, and now Sorokin looks like he's back in his form, which is good. He looked great against the Rangers. He's going to play on Wednesday against the Penguins. Hopefully he continues that. And so that's the big advantage for the Islanders. And like we have seen an Islanders goaltender steal a playoff series in our lifetime. You all remember Thomas Greiss 2016 versus the Panthers. That the Islanders won that series thanks to mainly 2 guys, Thomas Greiss and again the guy drafted ahead of Victor Hedman. And so it can be done, but the Hurricanes are going to be tough. And the thing is, if you turn the puck over in your own zone, or you don't get it deep enough into their zone, or you bump into one of your teammates in the neutral zone, it's going to go back the other way.
All 3 of you run into each other in the neutral zone.
Yeah. And the thing is, one turnover in your own zone leads to, because of the way the Hurricanes play, it's going to lead to like 10 different Hurricane shots in 30 seconds.
We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Take the action on any of the NHL's upcoming games, including Lightning Panthers, Rangers Islanders, or Avalanche Oilers. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 186 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. What worries me really, it's not even all of the, even like just to focus on the defense. It's really like I don't trust Aho or Bortuzzo
No.
because they're the ones that are making all of these mistakes. That
Yeah.
was Saturday against the Rangers, just
Mm.
letting chances go, and that's what is worrying me. I think
Yeah.
I'm the other Riley's been great.
He was
He's
really good
doing
tonight too. Yeah.
yeah, I mean he skates. It's not as nice looking as Letty was when he was skating, but
Right.
as graceful, but it's good enough.
Yeah.
And somebody to actually carry the mail in a different way was desperately needed. But the Aho Bortuzzo thing, I really don't know who the better option is because both make me terribly nervous.
Yeah. Now, here's my hope, and this is impossibly naive. And again, I will definitely mention this in our eventual episode of Islanders Anxiety. The hope is that these guys, as a collective, can look at each other after Wednesday's game. Again, win or lose, it really doesn't matter for them at this point, and basically say, okay, look, we made the playoffs. Like, we made it through this 82 game slog. It was hugely imperfect. Our coach got fired. We have a new coach. We've been through hell and back with these guys. We've had guys hurt. We've had guys, show up, or disappear in weird places. But now it's different. And now it is for real. And so maybe the team that we see when the playoffs start, whether it's Saturday or Sunday for them, we'll find out, I guess, in a couple of days, actually shows up and plays like a real NHL team and maybe tightens up those turnovers and tightens up that neutral zone play and tightens up gets those pucks in deep when they're supposed to get those pucks in deep. So it's possible, but it's they say you can't flip a switch, but maybe these guys can. I don't know, but they didn't last year where they were sloppy all season long, made the playoffs, and then were sloppy in the playoffs and then got beat by one of the most embarrassing overtime series winning goals you'll ever see,
Yeah.
which is, two normally really good players kind of, just crossing each other up. So I don't know. Right now, it's cool that they're done. We can relax. We're gonna have a nice Tuesday and Wednesday. Hopefully, if they can beat the Penguins and keep them out of the playoffs.
Oh, it's delicious.
That would be
I
the
can't
best.
wait.
That almost might be better than an actual playoff series.
Oh, yes. To be spoilers after you've already locked up
Right.
your spot,
Right. Just awesome.
especially against the Penguins,
Oh,
is just a chef's kiss moment for Islander fans. I know Michael loved that. I can't wait to hear if after this week.
Yeah.
I think you just going back to like flipping a switch. If there was ever a moment where Patrick Waugh will truly shine, it could be in this moment. I think one of the bigger disappointments that I'm trying to like project this onto the team, rightfully or wrongly, but when they were going through the 6-game skid, they're not playing well for this guy. How embarrassing that must have been, and disappointed they must have just been in themselves that they're playing in front of this Hall of Fame guy. And this isn't like Gretzky where it was like, I don't understand why you don't know this, right? Like I'm the greatest of all time. Like, do the thing. I don't think that's what he's doing, especially because he's a goalie and he just understands the game differently. And I just kept sitting there thinking how embarrassing it must be to face that guy every day in practice and every day on the bench and every shift you go back and you fucked up. And he's just there. He's just a presence. Like, he knows how to win better than anybody. To go to the playoffs now, if it's a clean slate and just burn the tape, it really does. It's irrelevant. No one will remember the regular season if you make a dent in the playoffs this year. Even if you make it to the second round, I think that would be far and away what the expectations were, especially towards the end. In the beginning, they were second in the Metro. You're like, okay, this team could really do something.
Yeah.
Maybe they're really are as good on the ice as they are on paper. But in the playoff series, I'm really hoping this is where Waugh can shine the most and say, not a lot of you really know what it takes to get here. Bortuzzo is the only player that has won a Stanley Cup on this team.
Right.
And really the only one other than the Islanders that have went to back-to-back conference finals that have ever even had a taste. And this is a very different roster than those rosters. I've tried to make that abundantly clear
Yeah.
on the show. I think we get caught up in that. Certainly ESPN, who's not watched a game in 3 years, it seems,
Yeah.
every single time. But like Watt can actually be like, look, like almost bring in the Conn Smythe. Like, I know what I'm talking about. You need to buy in. Like
Yeah.
you need to know how important this is, that we focus and get down to business.
I mean, maybe that's the case. Maybe they did look at each other. I mean, I know obviously Barzell is taken very, very much like into Wah being the coach is like a huge thing for him. And he's played well since he took over. Palmieri's played very well as well. So maybe he feels that same way. But I'll be honest, like, I don't know how this team relates to each other. And I want to know. Like, I really wish there was like a fly on the wall situation or like a, a behind the scenes. Obviously, I'm thinking of this is the wrong team to be thinking, because they're never going to do anything like that. But I just don't know how these guys relate. Mike and I have, one of the early things we talked about was calling them the uncles, because
I knew that was coming.
These guys have been on the teams for so long that everybody's kids call each other, Uncle Cal or Uncle Anders or Uncle Matt or whatever. So like, they're really tight. And on some ways, that's beautiful. Like, I wish I was that tight with my coworkers, when we were all together all these years and went through all these wars and stuff. But at the same time, there has been a lot of points at this season where it looked to me, and I mean, we've talked about this extensively on Anxiety, that like somebody's got to have a tough conversation with one of the uncles and be like, bro, you are not carrying your weight and you've got to pick it up and get shit done. And that was one of my things with Barry Trotz, where he talked about, everybody talks about accountability, and they talk about it from a standpoint of like management, making players accountable or whatever, coaches make. That's not the case. The players have to make themselves accountable and hold themselves accountable. So like, you do your job so that the guy next to him can do his job, and the guy next to him can do his job. And if everybody's doing the right thing, then you will go far. And if one guy's slacking or one guy's not carrying his weight or doing what we're talking about, now the whole thing starts to fall apart. And I mean, right. How many shifts have we seen this year where one line comes out, doesn't do anything, doesn't get a chance, just kind of skating around. They skate off the ice. The next line comes out. They try and do something. They don't do anything, skating around. They're stuck in their own zone. Another guy comes out. Maybe they get something going, but then, nothing happens and they got to go back. And then it's just a cycle all over again. So it seems to me that these guys really do care about each other and care about being Islanders. And that's great. But sometimes that's just not enough. And sometimes you just got to pull yourself together and play the way you know how to play. And I don't want to hear that like, oh, they're older now. Well, yeah, so am I. So are you. Like, we're all older, but like, these guys aren't 50 years old. Like they're still in the prime. They're still young men that they can go out there and play. And so to me, this is again where I'm being very naive, but I am hopeful that they can find that aspect of themselves and right whatever wrong and forget about it, and just be like, throw out the first 82 games, forget about it. Now we're starting from scratch, and now we can do the things that we need to do because we're here and we fought through.
I wonder if, because you sparked something for me. I was trying to make it somewhat relatable, and just because we're obviously not professional athletes and try to figure out what that's like. And I am on a beer league team now that for years it wasn't really fun to be there, and I really didn't want to play anymore. It made it really hard to be there. And the last couple of years, it's a really good group. And there was a 10 p.m. game last night. I really didn't want to go. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of just want to go, we're not best friends. Like some people hang out after they golf and, whatever, but he's like, get a beer afterwards or, shitty bar food beforehand or whatever that makes your stomach hurt while you're skating. And, it makes it really fun to be there. But I wonder about this team. Are they more like high school friends who, when you're an adult, you're like, well, we just know each other. Like, we wouldn't be, if you met them now, you probably wouldn't be friends. But now that you are, or like cousins you were really close with when you were little, and then now you're not anymore because you're adults, and even if you live close together, sometimes you just grow apart. You're just different people. You live different lives. You went to different schools or whatever differences that you had. Like, over time, like, I guess they're tight, but like a group of high school friends, that, there's just a lot in common because you have history. That doesn't mean there's a future, to be really kind of cliche about it. It doesn't mean that there's something to actually hold on to other than Like, it's
Yeah.
almost, the Ron Swanson work proximity associates. It's like, yeah, after a while, you become friends, but it's like, is it
Right.
just because you've been together, or is it because you're actually friends?
Yeah.
They seem like an actual family, which
Yeah, I
is
was gonna
just
say,
dysfunctional, you know?
yeah. But that's the thing. I think that they're actual friends, and that's what makes having those hard conversations so hard. It's like you don't want to tell your friend, dude, you're being a jerk, or like, and the other thing
Yeah.
too is like, well, most of the time we have friends, they don't work with you. Like you have people you work with, and maybe they're your friends and you like them and you hang out with them. But then you have your friends who, in some case, I mean, I've had the same best friend since the second grade. So like, we have two other guys in our group that we've been friends with, both of us, since the sixth and seventh grade. So like we've known each other for a very, very, very long time. And like, it's hard sometimes to be like, dude, you're being a jerk here, but like, like, you're not doing it in a work context. You're doing it in a friend context. Somebody's playing a card, playing games, like, or being loud or something like that. When you work together, that's a different thing. And like, you have to tell somebody you're not playing because to me, I find it very hard to believe that these guys don't know when they are, as Mike and I have said many times on Anxiety, playing like assholes. Like they know they know when they're being too passive in their own zone. They know when they're turning the puck over. They know when they're letting the other team just zip through the neutral zone untouched and unfettered, and giving up, having 2-minute shifts in their own zone and giving up a million shots all at once, and getting just squandering opportunities and not spending enough time in their zone. I can't imagine that they don't know that that's wrong, but
Yeah.
somebody's got to step up and be like, this is wrong. We can't do this anymore. And like, you have to, and I'm not, I'm not saying that Lane Lambert didn't deserve to lose his job, because he was not sort of, fostering confidence in the fan base, to say the least. But, when they were doing that stuff under Wah, I was like, man, really? Like, what is going on? That's when I started getting very, very angry and very, very frustrated.
Yeah,
It's
and you
like,
used the word rotten, and that to
yeah.
me really resonated.
Mm.
And it's I for Lambert's entirety behind the bench, I said it's yes, there's a leadership problem, but it's not just behind the bench. It's
Right.
on the ice.
That's, yeah.
Where's Anders Lee? Where's Clutterbuck? You
Right.
have to leadership means that there's an understanding between you and the people that you're with,
Yeah.
whether that's at work, and that there are going to be moments, and sometimes you just need to listen, and
Yeah.
sometimes you just need to let that person do what they need to do, and you
Yeah.
need to follow directions. And again, even with WAM, yeah, you must know, but how are you doing? How are you not motivated to change? And so much of it is it's not effort, right? I
No.
forget it's not necessarily you see a guy trying so hard and they're not going very fast. Like they're just yeah,
Mm.
it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of just elbows and knees are
Mm.
all over the place. Yeah, I mean they're trying. I don't think it's lack of effort. It's focus. Like they
Yeah.
just didn't have that level of focus that you really need.
Mm.
That's really the biggest concern going into the playoffs. And
Yeah.
you see it in spurts, but you also see these long stretches. These second
Right.
periods are 40 minutes apiece, it feels like. Just of God, if it's not one thing, it's another, and just in your own way. And
Yeah. There's too
um
many games where they let the other team, and I've talked about this on my Twitter account too. Like, there's too many games where they've let the other team dictate the terms and
oh
not
yeah.
pushed back on themselves. And then at the end, after they've lost, been like, I've heard, how many Islanders have we heard at the end of a game say, well, we knew they were going to come out with some urgency, and so had to weather the storm. Well, it's like, yeah, but you guys can show some urgency too. And if
Yeah,
you knew
what's
they were going to
stopping
come,
you?
right, like, if you knew they were going to come out with some urgency, why didn't you push back and make that urgency harder to come by? Why did they get to determine the tempo of the game? Because they had the urgency. You guys have urgency too, and you have a say in this. You are playing the game. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just too much of that. And I'm not saying that that a players only meeting is a cure all for it, because I mean, we've seen teams have them and nothing happens, but we heard none of that. We heard no pushback, no players only meeting. There was the one players meeting that Cal called on the bench in that Rangers game, and then they gave up 13 shots in the period. And like, yeah, okay, they won the game, and I guess they played okay, but like, it doesn't sound like that. I don't know what Cal said, but I'm sure it wasn't go give up 13 shots in this period and still come out. Hopefully Anders can get an empty net goal and we win the game. Like, that wasn't it. So I don't know. And that's, again, it got frustrating when the same stuff happened under Wah. You started thinking of like, maybe these guys are country club. Maybe they are just too comfortable and they just, who cares who the coach is? What difference does it make? They're just going to do the same things that they want to do. But they righted it. Again, they've had now 2 lengthy winning streaks under Wah here at the end of the season. They made the playoffs and get 1 game earlier than they made the playoffs last year. So I guess that's a feather in their cap.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of and to get into some of the games last week, specifically the Ranger games, it's a lot of it seems like a feeling of things just didn't go our way.
Mm,
And you have the ability out. Like, there are 2 teams. You
mm,
happen to be one of them, in case you didn't know, and you can go out there and have a game plan. I kind of like that perspective of, like, yeah, what's the game plan going in this game? And it seems like
right.
it's always the same thing. And
Mm,
at the end, they're like, yeah, we did what we do, and we stuck to our game plan, and it just didn't go our way tonight. And that
right.
adjust. Like, that's
Mm,
on ice leadership. That's
right.
behind the bench. That's
Yeah.
just being a professional. I've never just gone through my work day and something pops up and I go, I don't know. Well, I just do it this way. So I don't know what to tell you. Like, I guess just this
Right.
is what it is now.
Yeah.
Like, a team that's gonna well, I'm trying to think of a recent loss. Luckily, it's been a while.
Mm,
I probably against a game against the Flyers. Like, oh, we knew they were going to come out, and
right.
I could have. I think they wound up maybe winning that game, with Fedotov coming in, but
Right. Yeah.
um, they could have just as easily. And I think you even mentioned this on anxiety. Like, they could have. We heard uh, that post game.
Yeah.
Like, we absolutely know what could have been said
Yeah.
following that. And if the game plan is, yeah, we're going out and we're going to play
Mm,
Wednesday. You want
right.
to go into the playoffs with all these wins, feel good, get Sorokin a win.
Yeah.
Presumably he's starting on Wednesday, and probably a topic we should discuss
Mm,
here. But go out there and say, like, dude, don't touch the puck. Everyone's
yeah.
the 4th line. Go out there, make them go 200 feet. I mean, again, peewee or
Mm,
Bantam level hockey stuff,
right.
like, make them have to look over their shoulder every time
Yeah.
they touch the puck.
Well, I'll give an
And
example of a game like that. Was the game that was going on while we had our live event at the Offside Tavern, which was the 4-1 loss to Tampa Bay. They had lost, I think, the 2 games before that the Lightning had, and the Islanders had won the game in
in Florida.
Florida or in Sunrise to stop the bleeding, and then all of a sudden they go into Tampa and they lose 4-1, and they never really had a chance. Like, they took a 1-0 lead, but it was kind of unearned, and then the Lightning just took the game over and just ran it out from there. And again, it's like, yeah, they had some urgency. They wanted to right their own ship, but your ship wasn't exactly right either. So, but yeah, it's been tough. And again, I just, these guys have been around for so long that we are in a very strange position because we've watched this same team, it feels like, for so long. And I don't know if any other team in the league gets this, where, we rarely ever have young guys come up. Kyle McLean had a great game today, and he's the one young guy we've had come up. We had Hudson Fashing last year, who hasn't really been as good, although he's looked okay so far in the last couple of games. But like, it's, we don't have this sort of churn of new blood coming in. The Islanders are the same blood, and it's been a pretty successful blood. I mean, they made the playoffs 5 out of 6 years, so it hasn't been bad at all. But it's just a weird scenario where these guys, like you said, you want to give them credit for doing these things, but at the same time, there are times when they play like they barely know each other. But it's like, you guys have been on the same team for 12 years. Like, how is that even possible? It's just,
Yeah, they're just
guys
going
not
through the
doing their thing.
motions.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
they're I
that's the
think
best
they're
way to say it.
showing up, and I know I'm trying to just to, I tend to just try to relate to things the best that I can. And um the only way that I can, out, being in a not playing a sport professionally, not that I've been a musician professionally, but being in a band and having those hard conversations, because you're not necessarily friends when you start. Like,
Right.
I've been in groups, and it's not like your high school or college band where, yeah, just again, the proximity of the people. Oh, you play an instrument
Right. Yeah.
also, you can do that. In a lot of cases, the older that you get, you're playing in a band, and you may know people, like, as friends or peripherally through music, but you may not have. I'm in a band now with 4
Mm,
guys before this, I've never really hung out with before.
mm,
And it's hard to critique each other. I was in the band that I was in before this, I didn't really know them. I knew one
yeah.
of them. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
real, and we had a couple members in and out and guitarists, whatever. But yeah, it's really hard to
Yeah.
critique, especially when you're creating something, and
Right.
art
Yeah.
and sports aren't exactly the same. But
No, but
at
yeah, it
the end,
is.
you're
Yeah.
creating a win. Like,
True.
you're all working towards something specific. it's a lot like really any job, but it's when it's art and it's something that's feels somewhat organic,
Mm,
like it could go any way at any point. Work is
yeah.
very like
Right.
do what you're supposed to do, you stay in your lane, you should probably be okay, right?
Right.
Barring some kind of an emergency,
Right.
which I've become all too accustomed to. But I think it's with art, like, yeah, it's really hard to critique something. Like they bring it
Yeah.
to the table and it's the thing, and like a shift, like they did the thing, and you come back and maybe they really did try hard and it was just a mistake, but
Well,
you have
nothing's
to be
worse than
able
like,
to like critique it.
yeah, nothing's worse than like putting a lot of work into something and then having somebody go, nah, I don't know.
No,
Like,
dude, I get
it's a
redlined
thing.
for a living, right? Like that's
Yeah.
my whole job, and like so I try
Right.
not to like I could take the personal
Right.
stuff out of there, but
Yeah.
like I wrote a cool drum part recently, and we're doing it. He's like, for the second verse, we really like I'm thinking something else. And I'm like,
Mm,
dude, I really love that.
yeah. Right.
And it's hard to like are you gonna be a Ringo Starr where you're just the I'm
Right.
a drummer, like you're just gonna
Hanging around. Yeah.
if well, like, be there, but, like, everyone appreciates it. Like, the
Mm,
people if kind of musician stuff, or you're gonna push back, and
mm,
is it gonna make the song better? And you have to make these choices. I think
right.
when you're thinking about your individual game and again, just being focused, and
Mm,
as a team, like, who's bringing them together?
mm,
That's not necessarily your coach. And when I was coaching, that was something you have to show up and be ready. This is
mm,
not something you're responsible for you. Collectively, we
right.
have an obligation to show up that way for each other. That's it. Follow what our game plan is and move forward, and we'll adjust.
Yeah.
Who's on it? Who's not having a good game? Who's grabbing their stick too tight?
Yeah.
Who's cold or whatever. Um, it does. I don't know what that dynamic is. I frankly, a professional sports team I've never been close to, so
Yeah.
I don't fully understand.
But also this team is unlike any other team because again they've been around for so long that it's got to be hard to have those kind of. I'm a manager in my job too, and I think I'm absolutely terrible at it. But like there are times when you got to tell somebody, "Hey man, you got to do this better." Like I just can't. I don't know what to tell you. But this team is very odd. It's definitely different than a team that we've seen in our lifetime because we were so used to these sort of transient teams for a long time. Then the mercenary teams happened. Then it was the rebuild teams with all the young guys that we all kind of expected to be the core of a Stanley Cup contender. That didn't happen. And now these guys are the core, and they've just been here forever. So it's so weird. Whereas again, most teams have kind of at least a couple of new guys every year. The Islanders almost never do. So
It,
it's
it's
been fun.
it's been happening so intermittently, right?
Yeah.
Because it really is thinking that Bavillier's not around and Bailey's not
Mm,
around, and it's going back a little bit further, but Boychuk and
right.
Letty and all these
Eberly. And
Eberly, like there
yeah.
were a lot of these players over time. I mean, you can even, um, but yeah, even players that predated the runs,
Mm,
right? Like, and
right.
thinking about that, it is a very different team in that respect. It's
Yeah, I guess so.
over half as different. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel like that.
Right.
And maybe, whether, fortunately or unfortunately, Lewis found guys that just fit the mold.
Right.
So it does feel like a lot of these players have been Bortuzzo just feels like he's been here.
Oh yeah, for sure. Riley too.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's been this season, but yeah, you
Mm,
could have been like, were they on that? Who was the third pair at that, like
right.
who's Scott Mayfield now? Like he's a guy that's been around and you're like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that guy's
Yeah.
he's a person on this team." And you
And
just
he's gonna
totally
be around
forget.
for 6 more
And
years
he's
too.
right, 6 more years and um yeah, that's a different debate in the offseason. Like,
Yeah,
oh god,
yeah,
what
yeah.
this they weren't
Right.
really better with or without him. It didn't I said this earlier in the season and maybe with the last time that you were on. For better or for worse, it did not matter for this team this season. Now that they made the playoffs, it did not matter who was in the lineup. They were fucking bad. It whether it did it Bortuzzo or Aho or this,
Mm,
the line changes, all these combinations, all this stuff, nothing changed. For better or
yeah,
for worse, they won a game. It felt like it,
yeah,
rolling the dice. They lost the game. That's the
yeah.
way it goes.
You had, Romanov and Dobson were really good, and then, I guess Pelech and Pulick are pretty good still when paired together, but again, they've had kind of up and down seasons. But yeah, outside of Romanov and Dobson, the defense has been kind of a huge mess. Although Riley
Yeah.
Aho hasn't been that bad, but again, they're going to go into a playoff series with those guys, and now it's like, is that really who you want? So we'll have to see what happens. But it's this is exactly what we were just talking about. Like we can be happy they made it. they're done. We got the X, great. But come Thursday, we're gonna have to sit back and go, what do we now? What like now? What does this mean now? Man, now we're gonna watch these guys. I mean, these guys play a team that we all hate. I hate playing in Raleigh. As I've said on Anxiety, Rod Brindamore has that team and that fan base coached to make that not only a hostile environment for the other team, but for refs. They absolutely have conditioned everybody to make the refs public enemy number one in that place. And anytime a hurricane gets looked at long enough, they want to call. Anytime they get a penalty called against them, the refs are, boo, you refs, you suck. And it's really vocal. And if I was a ref, I would refuse to work those games. Like it's a hostile environment, and it makes playing impossible. And when you're a team with bad special teams like the Islanders, hopefully their penalty killing luck is now, permanently good, but it's going to be tough. And so right now I'm happy. I'll be happy tomorrow and Wednesday, probably. That'll be a fun game against Pittsburgh. But once the calendar flips to the postseason, man, I don't know. My appetite for watching another series with the Hurricanes is very, 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 very low.
So I'll say this, and I want to lump a couple things together because we really didn't get into the Ranger games, and I the Laviolette stuff was very funny to me, and obviously how you guys handled that was great, and and all of that. I think thinking about this winning streak and everything that seems to have been going right, and this really the one of the moments other than tonight where the rest of the teams won and they really didn't help the Islanders was my mom and stepdad were in town and we were watching the Detroit and the Rangers play.
Okay.
And for that night I was a Rangers fan.
Yes.
And they were going in and they're both Ranger fans. And so we were watching the game and I was very excited about that. And I was like, man, if they could just win tomorrow, they can just get it. They can just figure it out. It totally changes things. Like that was really the moment. And thinking about a team that just, in their own words, is like, oh, it just didn't go our way. It kind of has started to, right? They're finally getting that. And as I was watching the game the game last Tuesday against the Rangers, and obviously Dobson destroys Trocheck, the grease ball, and unfortunately it's a Zibanejad thing. I didn't like to see that. But even for the Islanders, I was like, man, I'm surprised they didn't just call it because it's the Islanders, and that's just how it goes. And so I'm watching the game, and I'm between both of them, and I had to get up and go to the bathroom, and I just hit him on the back, and I went, "Them's the breaks," and I just got up. And the more that I thought about that was, God damn! Finally, it really is the breaks, and they didn't get the call. Dobson wasn't suspended or anything. He's hurt. He's not playing, but at least he's not suspended.
Right.
And really, from that moment a few weeks ago, in hindsight, I'm more excited about the playoffs. Like, all right, at least lose in 6-7 games and just have a good series. You don't want a feel bad win or like of course they lost that game. They played like horseshit. Like, oh, you know what? That was a great the 2013 Pens Islanders series. That was a great series. I'm upset the Islanders lost,
right?
But that was a good series. They really gave it 100%.
Yeah.
Unlike Game 7 in 2015 against the Capitals, where you're like, "Are you?"
I remember that.
Oh my god,
that was awful.
I clearly am over it, but like that's the kind of like that, like the dichotomy of the thing. My feeling now, if there was, obviously they're winning games, but it's kind of this underlying thing of they're finally getting the breaks. Like they're not just complaining about not making their own luck. They're kind of starting to do it on their own. And on top of that, just get a little bit of the breaks from the refs or whatever.
Well, that comes from playing in a way that allows you to get breaks, when the Islanders, when they're so passive and they're so sloppy that the breaks don't come to you. Like you got to make, in the words of John Bon Jovi, you got to make your own breaks, So like when you're playing a little, they don't have the horses to play, full blast, full court press all the time. But like when you are more forceful and you are trying to take it to the other team every once in a while, you can make those breaks. So we'll see. I mean, here's the way I look at a playoff series. The Islanders, they're going to be good for at least one blowout game. Like they're going to get blown out at some point.
Game 2 somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
They're going to lose 6-0. Like, it's just, that's the way they always play. But you also know that they're good for probably 1, if not 2 overtime wins, because again, that's the Islander way, right? What's more Islanders than playoff overtime? So that's going to happen as well. And again, to me, the Hurricanes, they're obviously a very good team, but I have no playoff series have the Islanders gone into with this will be the third one now. And where I thought, oh man, they're gonna get their asses handed to them. Like, every single time I thought, oh well, they might be able to do something against these guys, but it's not going to be easy. And in order to do it, they're going to have to change a lot of how they've played all season long. And
the goal scoring is really going to need to come alive, because they can really demoralize this team.
Yeah.
By just popping a few. Like, if Palmieri can just keep going, if Nelson he's come alive the last couple of games, they need some bounces for sure, but they just need pucks to the net. Just hit the net. You can't all be Ryan Pulock. It was a 108-mile-an-hour slap shot. Fantastic. You broke the glass in the corner. It wasn't ever going towards the net.
Right.
The goalie could have just left the net altogether and been fine.
That means Ryan Pulock, like, this guy, he hits the net maybe 10 times a year. And if he can start hitting it in the playoffs, then they're going to be in good shape.
Yeah, or Romanov has a good shot. Just they need to actually set that up. Dobson obviously just get a few here and there.
Romanov almost had a goal tonight, but apparently it didn't cross the red line, the goal line, because it was like on its edge. So, but
yeah, and he was up to, that would have been his 8th goal, and that was a regular thing for Pulock. Yeah. He was in 9-10 goals a year, easy, 36 points or whatever on the regular, and obviously he's dropped off, but you got to find it in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean,
like you have to at least aspire to that a little bit, even as a defenseman. Like, you got to make your mark in the offensive zone, and the Hurricanes don't really have the goalies to. I mean, Kochetkov is good. He's not.
They're all good.
He's not consistent.
Right.
I've watched games. He was in Syracuse for 1 game. He was loaned here, and I was like, this guy does not belong in this league. He was so far and away better. He did not break a sweat. And I think he got a shutout.
But then the other 2 guys are incredibly injury prone. So, I mean, they make one save in the wrong direction, and all of a sudden they're, out for a week and a half or a month. So, yeah, I don't know. It's again, to me, they should have a chance, but it's going to depend a lot on how they play. And if they come out and start winging the puck around and not having a care as to where it ends up, and they end up, getting caught in their own zone for a while, they're gonna lose pretty quickly. I mean, they could also lose in 4 straight overtime games. Like, that would also not surprise me in the slightest.
Oh,
if that happened to so. But
and then we'll have to hear about, we were just 3 or 4 bounces away.
Yeah, right.
And
we're so close. Right.
Yeah, this time next week or by Wednesday of next week, it could be.
Right.
It could be very different. That's the beauty and the curse of the playoffs, I suppose, is that it comes crashing down pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But let's get there first. I appreciate you coming on. We finally did get into Islander stuff, so I'm happy that we didn't just accidentally get into deep dive, just scanning eBay, not for Islanders gear, but for Nintendo
Black
games,
Sabbath,
and Black Sabbath records. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I know we talked about it last week, but it was a little last moment. James was at the game tonight, and I'm out tomorrow, and I'm afraid he's just going to have his kid at any moment. So like, that's what he's like. I asked him about doing it last night, and he's like, maybe I could have a kid. And I was like, all right, I need a plan B. I need to actually lock this down.
I'm happy to be the plan B whenever James and his wife have their new baby. And that's how it is. That's the glamour of podcasting, is you got to get it done in some way, one way or another. And we try and be as consistent as possible, but the times we've recorded, the days we've recorded, the things that we've done all over the place, jumping through hoops, it's nothing new, and it's part of the gig. But no, I'm happy to be here. This is always a lot of fun. Again, I'm available. You got me now. I was expecting to do tomorrow night, but now I got the night off, I guess. But Mike and I will be back on Thursday, and then we'll see where we're going. I mean, now we're all stuck. Now we all have to wait for a memo to come out from the NHL before we all know when we can record again. So we're all going to be trying to figure things out from here on out.
Yeah, we do need a big crossover episode at some point. I've been thinking about that.
Sure.
We wanted to do a live event. I don't know if we have the following quite like you and Mike do. You have a few more years on us, but
You never know. Do it. I'll be there. I'll
Yeah,
come.
well, I'd love to do like a big round table with through the
Yeah,
island and light and anxiety and
that
us
would be fun.
and
Yeah,
even hockey night or whoever wants to be there, just
sure.
kind of show up. Um,
We should
we
do it at Hockey Night Studio because it's nice. That's a nice
there
setup that Sean has over there.
there you go. Just like bring your own microphone and plug it in, and
Yeah,
everyone's
right.
good to go. Yeah, so thanks again. Where can everyone find you? Assuming that for some reason the three people that don't follow both of us that are listening to here that aren't just psychopaths and listen to every Islanders podcast like the both of us.
Yeah, you can find us Islanders Anxiety everywhere you find podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, YouTube Music, wherever. And then we also have Patreon, patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety for ad-free episodes, bonus stuff, and a whole lot more. And then we also do Weird Islanders, which we talked about a little while ago. Listen to John's episode about Trevor Linden. We just did one about Randy Robitaille. We've had 3 great seasons, and every single one is a different rabbit hole, and so they're a lot of fun. And so we try and have a good time, even though this team does its best to make sure that we have about as miserable a time as possible. But our goal is always fun, as much as we can squeeze out of it. So
Yeah, Weird Islanders is at least nostalgic pain. It's like, oh, when I was a kid, I had that same feeling that I do
right.
now. I was like, okay, maybe this is bad, but
It's
uh,
like now I can laugh about it, but back then it wasn't funny,
right. It's
So
kind of like in 15 years from now, thinking about this season. It's like,
right.
I really wish I didn't remember Bortuzzo. Actually,
Well, yeah, he's easily the weirdest Islander on the roster, and he's definitely going to get a Weird Islanders episode at some point because I highly doubt this is going to be a multi-season tour for him. So I would soak in as much Bortuzzo content as you could possibly find this season because it might be it for him. So you never know. Maybe he'll have a big playoff. Maybe he'll be a big playoff hero. You never know. He'll be the
yeah,
Alan Quine of the
that's right.
2024 Islanders.
That's right. That's a good callback.
Right.
As the Islanders beat the Devils tonight, as I'm sure we made it to the end of the episode. We talked a lot about the playoffs. Obviously, they made it. Not as exciting as the last time they beat the Devils. Although the connection is that not the starting goalie did it for them. Although
Right.
Varlamov was far from just being a backup.
Right. Quote
Dublowitz
checks necessary.
almost to the day, about like 5 or
Yeah.
6 days later.
Yeah.
Than from 2007. So it was exciting.
The
This was not nearly as exciting either. It was a pretty
no.
boring game.
The Islanders actually tracked down Wade Dublowitz, and on Twitter there is a video from him congratulating the Islanders on making the playoffs. So I'm going to watch it. It's pretty impressive.
They did that beforehand. They would do that to the hockey gods.
I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to find out. We'll have to investigate and find out how this came about. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I
need
don't
the
even know where he's
metadata.
at. He's wearing like a bright neon coveralls. Look like he's working on an oil rig or something. I don't know what's going on, but we'll have to see. But yeah, that's how you know it's a big deal. So that's pretty cool.
Wade Dublowitz came back. That's the ticket here. That'll be the playoff hero. If we need him ringing the horn or whatever, the Islanders press the button for the goal horn or something. The Islanders don't have the hurricane siren.
No.
All right. Please rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen or watch the show. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, YouTube at Nesman Hockey. You can find James' work when he's returned to the beat, although the Devils season is now over at New Jersey Hockey Now. And in my best James impression, until next time, let's go Isles.